Essentially, what happens with an antenuptial contract at TNK is that the parties contact our offices and they can either come and see one of our notaries together, or they can even go to separate attorneys if they want to. But generally they come into us, come consult with us together, and we explain to them the different types of marital regimes that there are, what the effects of each are, find out a little bit more about them and their circumstances, and give them some advice as to what we think would be a good fit for them.
What happens, a couple would come in to see me. They would spend an hour with me in my office. I would advise both the bride and the groom as to the strong points and weak points of their respective positions regarding the ANC. And as I say, within an hour the job will be done, the ANC will be prepared, and that's all they have to do. An ANC is a very important thing to do. If in South Africa your default system is a system known as community of property, and you do not want to be married in community of property. It's a very unsafe system. If any of the spouses were to go insolvent, both of them would go insolvent. If either of the spouses were to get a judgment against them, both of them would have to pay the debt. And you cannot provide any creditor protection if one of you, for example, owns a business. There are two different kinds of ANCs. There's the ANC without accrual and the ANC with accrual. 90% of couples, especially if they're young couples, are married with the accrual system, as it's a very fair marital system to be involved with. The ANC without accrual does have its place, but it's most often used by older couples when they have, for example, children. They want to keep their lines of inheritance separate. But for young couples starting out, the ANC with accrual does tend to work the best.
Once they've decided what marital regime would be right for them, a contract is drawn up, which is then signed in front of a notary. Once it's signed in front of a notary, then it has to go to Pietermaritzburg to be registered. The contract has to be signed before the notary before the wedding happens. So that's the most important thing. And what we generally advise our brides and grooms is to come see us quite a bit earlier than the wedding. By the time you come to wedding preparations and that last minute dash, emotions are high and it's not really always the most fun thing to do. So you want to get it out of the way sooner rather than later. And we normally recommend that everybody plans a really romantic date night after that. Go have some fun, because there can be some difficult conversations that are had.
The ANC without accrual is a system where everything that you own before the marriage and everything that you acquire during the period of your marriage is kept completely and utterly separate. So what happens is, when the marriage were to end in death or divorce, there's no sharing whatsoever of the wealth. In the traditional model, the husband would be the one that would acquire the wealth. The wife would be the one that would look after the family and be the homemaker, and she could end up very hard done by if the marriage were to end, because she hasn't had a chance to grow her career. With regard to the accrual system, what you've got is everything that you create together as a couple after the marriage starts is effectively put into a pot and shared when the marriage ends. So what happens is, the husband can go off and be the money earner, the wife can be the homemaker, and if the marriage were to end, then what happens is there's a fair division of the wealth that's been created by the husband.
I think it's very important for couples to have a discussion about the type of marital regime that they want to enter into when they talk about getting married. It's like any kind of partnership. If you decide at the beginning of it what the consequences are going to be if things go wrong, then when and if things go wrong, it makes it so much easier to deal with those things neatly and carefully. And an antenuptial contract isn't just for divorce. It's also what happens on death of either spouse. And it really does affect not just you, but your kids in those circumstances. It's a difficult conversation, and it's a difficult thing to do, like doing your last will and testament. The thing people don't realize about antenuptial contracts is it isn't just about distinguishing what's yours and what's mine. It really is a joint protection of you as a couple. If one of you, for example, is a business person and has your own business and comes into later years into difficulties and there's creditors' claims, your antenuptial contract is something that protects both of you in those circumstances and in lots of other circumstances that people don't always think about. So it's not just about separating what's yours and mine and what happens on death or divorce. It's really about taking care of each other in the process.
We don't know what's going to happen in our lives. If we think back to what happened where we were 10 years ago and how much our lives have changed in that 10 years, imagine you're going to have another 10, another 20, another 30, another 40 years. Who knows who's going to become entrepreneurial, who's going to start their own business, who's going to fail in business. And if you plan your life properly, and the way to start is by doing an antenuptial contract, if you plan your life properly, you can ensure that you make the safer spouse the owner of the assets. That not only provides protection for the family, but if you do an ANC with accrual, it also provides protection in the event of the marriage ending.
Very important with antenuptial contracts is that a lot of people think that they know and understand what they are, and they simply either try a quickie one with an attorney without actually getting specific advice regarding them, their assets, their circumstances, what their future plans are, what are the things that they're trying to prepare for and foresee. It's very important, not necessarily that you see us at Tate Nolan Knight, but you see some legal expert who can give you advice based on your circumstances, based on your assets, and based on your future plans of your life, so that they can take care of the eventualities that might happen in your circumstances.